Untitled Podcast is a part of the Kansas Google Education Group Network and also the Mace Kansas Network. You can find more information about episodes and guests at www.untitledpc.net. Welcome to Untitled Podcast. My name is Travis True.
And I'm Carol Nelson.
All right, welcome everybody to this episode of Untitled Podcast. Today our guest is Josh Stock from Olathe. Josh is currently a sixth grade language arts teacher at Santa Fe Trail Middle School in Olathe, Kansas, and an awesome expert. He's also co-chair of the building leadership team during the Mercury phase of the school's Kansas Can School Redesign Project. In his free time, he hosts the Kansas Moonshot podcast, highlighting the amazing things educators are doing in their classroom across the state of Kansas. Josh writes for websites such as Utopia and is a contributing author in the Best Lessons series literature, and also writes on his blog, MrStockRocks.com. Josh loves getting books into the hands of kids who want to read them. Over the past 5 years, he's given away over 4,000 used books and 2,500 new books to kids across the district. Josh is also the author of the book Awesome Sauce: Create Videos to Inspire Students, Engage Parents, and Save You Time, giving tips and tricks for creating video for the classroom. Josh was selected as one of the National School Board Association's 20 to Watch Educational Tech Leaders in 2016 and received the Make It Happen Award from the International Society of Technology and Education, that would be ISTE, and Mace, Kansas in 2017. And in 2018, he received the Emerging Young Educator Award from ISTE. He has presented in conferences across the country, including Mace, ISTE, and NCTE. Again, thank you for joining us, Josh.
Wow, that makes me sound a lot cooler than I really am. I probably could have pared that down a little bit because I'm not that impressive. So, but thanks for having me.
We're glad to have you along. So that was a very impressive introduction. Let's dig a little bit deeper and just share with our listeners your journey in education and how you ended up where you are now.
So whenever I first started my student teaching experience, I thought I was going to be a high school English teacher. I wanted to teach AP. I wanted to, work with older kids. We could have really deep, meaningful conversations. And then I student taught with middle schoolers, and I just fell in love with it because they're quirky and they're weird and I'm weird. So like we get along really well together. And I just knew that once I had that experience, I knew that's where I wanted to stay. And so I actually got my job at Santa Fe Trail. That was my first teaching job. And I've been here. This is my 13th year teaching, and I've been here the entire time. I've taught everything from 6th grade through 9th grade, reading intervention classes, language arts. But 6th grade's kind of that sweet spot because I get that transition from elementary to middle, which is like the perfect spot to be because they still love school. They're still excited to be there, but you can start to have more in-depth conversations.
So how did you get into creating videos for your classroom? Yeah, I always find this interesting because my first job was in a district that was a MAC district. And it was in 2000, and that was right around the time that iOS 10 was coming out, and you had iMovie, and it was really easy to make videos. And so I did a lot of video stuff even back then. So how did you get started making your videos, and then what projects do you have students create with video?
So I've been interested in video since I was a little kid. That was actually if I wasn't going to be a teacher, I was going to be a film editor, work on sound effects especially. So I've always been interested in video. When I was in college, I did a lot of video projects, and If that was an option on a project list, that was always my go-to. And so then as I've grown as a teacher, I've always tried to bring in stuff that I'm excited about, because I figure if I'm excited about it, the kids will be too. And so I started recording videos for my students. I saw a good positive interaction with that and a reaction to that. So I started creating more and more videos. So that's kind of, I've always been interested in it. And I mean, when I first started out, I thankfully had a Mac, but like in the classroom, I had the old, I don't know if you've seen the flip cameras that had the plugged into the USB drive, and it was clunky and the program didn't work very well. But we could record videos, and that's what mattered. So that was where I got my start. And then from there, as phones became had better quality cameras, I've really started using it more and more, because that's kind of been my go-to backup. If I don't have good equipment, I can always fall back on my phone.
I love that. What type of projects have you been doing in the classroom too?
So I love giving my kids a lot of options. And so I try to find some sort of element for video in any task we're trying to do. And as a language arts teacher, it really fits in nicely with my curriculum, because we do a lot of writing scripts for whatever video they're going to create. And then most of my evaluation is actually on the scripting piece, and that the video becomes like the end product, but I'm looking at the written word. One of my favorite ones is we do public service announcements. And so when we do persuasive writing, they write up a public service announcement and then record the video for that. And they get a lot of research involved in it. They do we watch some public service announcements to get some ideas for ways to persuade people to your side of thinking. And then they create those videos, and they have a lot of fun with it, but it's still really anchored into my curriculum and my standards. So I'm not sacrificing that just to add this extra video project. I mean, everything is embedded within that video project.
So I take it your love of videos and your projects in your classroom maybe led you to writing a book?
It did. So I've been wanting to write a book for a while, and I started presenting at conferences about video in the classroom. And I never made the connection that, hey, I could, take my love of video and write a book and put them together. And so as I presented and realized I had some ideas that I could put into a book, it kind of all came together at once. It was actually kind of cool because, this is National Novel Writing Month. It's a national writing project that people all across the country are writing stories. Well, they have another version of National Novel Writing Month over the summer. And I know this book isn't really a novel, but that was my project that I worked on. So for a month over the summer, I wrote this book. And then what's nice about it as a language arts teacher is I submitted it to publication, and I had to do probably 20 different rewrites, additions to chapters, editor tore it apart, and we put it all back together again. And so I can talk to my students about that whole writing process, which is really, really cool. So that was the end result, was my book, Awesome Sauce.
That's awesome. Awesome Sauce.
Yep.
Is that where the title came from?
The title actually, Amber Rowland out of KU, she told me, she's actually the one who really encouraged me to present. She brought me along to my first ISTE to present, and she's the one who told me that my presentation was Awesome Sauce, and that kind of stuck. And so it's all thanks to Amber that Awesome Sauce became the title of the book, and then it's kind of got a whole it's become its own thing. So yeah, so that's where Awesome Sauce came from.
Are there any teachers that want to get started with doing video projects? Are there any tips or suggestions you can give them that will help them if they've tried and failed, or they just haven't tried, they want to get started?
I would say the number one thing, the thing that usually holds people back, is their fear of messing up or their fear of it not being perfect. And so I have what's called the rule of 3, where I only give myself 3 attempts to record a video. Because the very first video I ever did, I spent hours and hours and hours on it. I thought it was perfect. I shared it with my students, and within like 15 seconds, they were like, Mr. Stock, did you notice that you messed up this word? I'm like, oh dear. Okay. So that led me to believe that it doesn't matter how long I spend on it, it's always going to have some imperfect element to it. So I only give myself 3 attempts, and then I share whatever it is I've created with the kids. And it's freed me up to actually create content, because that's the biggest hurdle. Is it's not all the extra stuff. It's just getting started and getting that content out there. And with that, I would also recommend record a lot of videos. So one of the tips that I give in my book is to record an announcement video for your kids. And that's a good way to practice setting up a camera, recording a video, uploading it to YouTube, and you get a lot of you get a good solid foundation of that. The other thing I'm going to say is don't let equipment get in the way of what you want to record. 90% of my videos are all filmed on my phone because it's what I've got. The video quality is great. I have an iPhone 8. So, I mean, it's not even the newest phone. It's just, it's good enough for my purposes. And kids are used to watching, I mean, they're watching TikTok videos, they're watching YouTube videos. The production quality on a lot of those are not like the most amazing thing ever. It's more about the content in the video. So it doesn't have to be perfect.
It's good advice.
What's your go-to tool when you're making? You said your phone, but what's your other go-to tool?
So I actually do a lot of screencasting. And I found that PowerPoint, which shocked me. PowerPoint is one of my go-tos right now because you can do a lot in the latest version of PowerPoint. You can do screencasting, you can add videos into it, and you can edit it together. I mean, it's like a rough edit. It's you can just cut in different places and trim the beginning and end of a video. But as a basic tool, I'm using PowerPoint a lot. As far as editing, I try not to do very many edits in my videos, and I try not to add a lot of effects and things because, again, it slows me down and I don't get the content out there. So I most of my videos I record the video and then I upload it directly to YouTube. I don't add music. I don't edit a whole lot. If I do, it's just trimming at the beginning and end when I'm pushing record. But that's it because I want that content to get out there.
And some people don't know that there's a basic editing tool in YouTube. Once you have your video uploaded, you can trim. I don't remember if you can add background music or not, but I know you can trim.
You can add music, and not only can you add music, but YouTube has its own library of music that you can use copyright free. Or if you do a search for YouTube audio library, they have a whole bunch of music sorted by genre that you can actually download and add to your videos.
Yeah, so that's another great resource is that library if you're looking for free sounds to use. Because actually, the beginning of this podcast I found a song that I really liked. So the beginning of end of this podcast actually uses a song from that library, and a lot of people don't know it's there. And it's awesome. It's an awesome resource. So I read your book. I got it when it first came out because I make a lot of videos.
Yeah.
I use Screencastify, and my videos are more for answering questions. Teacher will ask, how do you do this? And instead of typing up big long instructions in an email, it's easier for me to do a 30-second video and send them the link. So I learned some things from you. I really like you don't have to make it perfect. It's okay for people to see that you're not perfect. And the other thing I'll tell people too is when you start making videos, yes, that's what you sound like.
Yep.
and just get over it, because that's what people hear, and that's what you sound like. So there's nothing you can do about it. Because when I talk to people about making screencasts and that thing, that's one thing that'll hold some people back, is I just don't like the way I sound. It's like, well, that's too bad, because that's how you sound.
Every single day when you're talking to the kids in the classroom, you sound that way. Yep.
Yeah. So no, there's some, buy the book. It's awesome. It's awesome sauce. It's great, great stuff. Great ideas, project ideas, tips for making videos. Coming from me, that I've made videos off and on for 20 years with different tools and technology, Macs and PCs, and now Chromebooks. It's a really, really great addition to your library. So everybody needs to go buy it.
I tried to make sure that anything that was in there could be done with just about any tool, so that it was free to use anything that you've got handy and not be tied down to one particular tool. So
yeah,
that's great. We'll have a link so people can check out your book and the other resources that we've talked about in this episode as well. So, Josh, one final question. I think it's something that we've been asking everyone. What is something you will take away from teaching during COVID that you will carry forward and continue?
So this has really forced me to narrow down what I'm teaching and hone in on what's the most important element from any lesson I'm doing. And I found that less is more. And I also found that a lot of the things that I was putting into my lessons was just filler. And it was just, okay, I've got this number of minutes. I've got to fill every minute, and we're going to call it good. And now that I'm really focusing in on what's the most important thing that I need to cover, it's really pointed out a lot of areas that I just added a lot more than I needed to. And so that's one thing that's definitely going to carry over for me, is that I'm going to narrow down to what is the most essential piece of that. And it's also allowing me to differentiate a lot more, because I can use a lot of tools, like when we're in remote learning and we're breaking out into breakout rooms, I can use a lot of things like that. And I want to find ways to incorporate that into my classroom as well. So just narrowing down and differentiate for all learners, all things that have come out of this.
That's great.
All right. Well, Josh, thanks a lot for coming on and being our guest. You can find Josh on Twitter at Teach Like a Ninja. That's his Twitter handle. And again, we will have links to his book, his website, and any other resources that we mentioned here on the show. You can find those on the episode page at the Untitled Podcast website, which is www.untitledpodcast or untitledpc.net, and click on Josh's episode when it comes out, and then scroll to the bottom. You'll see the show notes with all those links. So, Josh, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see everybody next time.
See you next time.
Bye.